All right, well, welcome to Rotary. We are Rotarians going places, and we have an exceptional program for you today in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. So to get started are some very special guests who are greeting us today. Would each of you ladies please say your name and how old you are, maybe where you go to school?
Your name.
My name's Florencia.
And how old are you?
I'm 8.
And where do you go to school?
Nob Hill.
Okay.
What?
Okay, Esperanza.
Esperanza. I'm 11 and I go to Franklin.
And introduce your sister.
This is Maya. She goes to uphill. She's 7.
And then say it all at once.
Welcome to Rotary.
All right, thank you so very much. We're so pleased to have you join us today. It's absolutely wonderful to hear from you, and best wishes to you young ladies as you start the school year. So next up with music, Sonia Rodriguez-True.
Wow.
Oh, thank you, President Jennifer. So the song that I picked for today's celebration is actually by Linda Ronstadt from her album Canciones de mi Padre. And I know a lot of us know Linda Ronstadt from her popular music, but I don't know how many of us know that Linda Ronstadt also sang and produced and put out there a album in Spanish, and that was recognizing her father's Mexican roots. He was part German and part Mexican. And also, I think that brought up an interesting point because a lot of people don't know that there's a lot of German influence, particularly in the Mexican culture. I just read a book about the German influence in Texas. And so I thought this was really a good way to listen to something very traditional in Mexican. Her music is just incredibly rich, but also keeping in mind the European influences that are a part of our Mexican culture.
esta vida mejor que se acabe no es para mí. Pobre de mí, pobre de mí. Cuánto sufre mi pecho que late tan solo por ti.
Bravo, that was a beautiful music selection. Thank you so much, Sonia, for that. I learn something new with our music every single week, and that's no exception, so thank you. Next up with invocation, Nede Carrasco.
Thank you, President Jennifer. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for our life, for our families, and our community. We pray for world peace. We ask that you bless our speakers today. May your spirit guide us and our loved ones all the days of our lives. Amen.
Thank you so much for invocation. Dan Sullivan, you are up next with your announcement about the MLK Park Playground Bill.
Awesome. Good afternoon, President Jennifer, fellow Rotarians and guests. Thank you for the opportunity to be on the call today to talk about the Martin Luther King Park Playground Project. I'm happy to report that after being shelved for several months due to the outbreak of the virus and the related stay-at-home orders, we will be able to finally complete this project. Working with the partners at the Yakima Parks and Recreation, we have been advised that we can move forward in a safe and responsible manner. I'm on the call today to ask for volunteers to help assemble the playground. We will be assembling the playground equipment on Saturday, September 19th. Our efforts that day will be led by the experienced team of Don Bombach, Jordan Matson, Jim DeGrasse, and Dusty Dorr. But we do need volunteers to help on that day. We have segmented the day into 3 4-hour shifts, an 8:30 to 12:30 morning shift, a 12:30 to 4:30 afternoon shift, and a 10 to 2 o'clock midday shift. If you can join us, please email the Rotary office, Eric Silvers, or myself to let us know what shift you would like. A couple of things about volunteering. First, everyone is welcome to contribute to this effort. You do not need to be an experienced builder. You do not have to have great skills with power tools. All you really need to have is a willingness to help and chip in, and there'll be plenty to do. Also, you do not need to bring any tools. Tools will be provided. However, if it is comfortable for you, please feel free to bring a socket wrench, a step ladder, a shovel. You will need to have proper footwear, and specifically that's shoes with a closed toe, and work gloves and sun protection are also recommended. In the days of COVID, we are taking steps to protect volunteers as much as possible. Protective equipment will be provided, including masks, latex gloves, safety glasses, hand sanitizer. Workflow is being coordinated to help with social distancing, and we will be outside in the fresh air of what should be a beautiful fall day. You know, past President Eric Silver's community project has been a long time coming. His project will have a meaningful impact and a lasting impact on this neighborhood, and is the type of positive, proactive step that we can make in our community for it to be just a bit more beautiful and a bit more cohesive. This should be a great day for fellowship, contribution, and accomplishment. I hope you can join us on Saturday, September 19th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan, for coordinating this project. And indeed, make sure you've got that on your calendar and let the Rotary office know what shift you'd like to sign up for. And we have other volunteer opportunities. As you know, we have got Operation Harvest coming up on October the 3rd. But prior to that date, we need volunteers to also sign up for the Fair Food Fest to collect food at that event. You have an email in your email box that was dated September 1st at 11:52 a.m. that you can refer back to sign up for the various shifts for Operation Harvest. And of course, they need volunteers not only on the collection routes, but also at the pickup or the drop-off site, I should say, as well as holding up signs, etc. So please make sure to refresh your email box, take a look for that one on September the 1st that came through, and sign up for Operation Harvest. Also, remember that our own Rotarian Ward Sutton is going to be doing a 100-hole golf marathon coming up on September 21st, and you can sponsor him for the number of dollars that you'd like to donate per hole. And we certainly expect that Ward will complete those 100 holes on that date. But again, be sure to check your email box for that. And it looks like Quinn is also posting the link in the chat. So thank you, Quinn, for doing that. Also next week on the 17th is the Molly Monroe Davis Golf Tournament, which is now sold out. However, you can still support the Yakima Rotary Trust and their fundraising efforts. Take a look in your mailbox. Coming up soon is going to be their annual fund drive that they're doing by mail this year. So again, please participate in that. The Yakima Rotary Trust supports all 3 clubs and our club projects, including the MLK Park Playground and the upcoming build that will be going on out at the Greenway to replace McGuire Playground. So help support that Yakima Rotary Trust as well with their efforts. Next up, Sergeant at Arms, Past President Eric Silvers.
Hello, thank you, Past President Jennifer. Thank you for the introduction there. Looking forward to this. I tell you, I'm joined by my Latina bride, Esther. And so we are going to do a really good Sergeant of Arms here. And remember, please take out your checkbook and write a check to Rotary so that way we can be able to get some money in there off of these questions. So, and boy, what an honor it is to be able to be asked to be able to do this, and also to be able to have my bride sitting right next to me. So we're going to team this and be able to do a wonderful job. So our first question, Dwayne, first question, go ahead.
The U.S. Hispanic population reached A, 59.9 million in 2018, B, 48.9 million in 2018, or C, 50.4 million in 2018.
All right, and the correct answer is A. Thank you, Dwayne.
This makes Hispanics the nation's second fastest growing racial or ethnic group after Asian Americans. Hispanics made up 18% of the U.S. population in 2018, up from 5% in 1970.
Wow, okay. All right, next question.
Mexican Independence Day is A, September 9th, B, September 16th, or C, September 22nd.
All right, now you know that we're taking a lot on the honor system, so the correct answer, you are right, it is B, September 16th. Great job, you guys. All right, next question.
She became the first Latina astronaut to go into space in 1993 aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery. Is it A, Ellen Ochoa, B, Sandra Cisneros, C, Eva Mendez?
Wow, they're coming in already. Okay, you are correct. It is A. Great job there. And our next question, I'm sure that 99% of us should be able to get this one right. So I threw this one in as a freebie here. Go ahead, Esther.
Sonia Sotomayor was sworn in as the first Latina justice on the A, U.S. Supreme Court, B, Washington State Supreme Court, or C, Administrative Court.
Ooh, okay. All right, it is A. Great job, fantastic. All right, the next question.
This record number of Latinos are projected to be eligible to vote in 2020. Is it A, 30 million, B, 32 million, or C, 18 million?
Ooh, I don't see anybody saying anything yet. The correct answer is B, 32 million.
More than half of Latinos in the US live in just 3 states. About 26% live in California, followed by Texas, 19%, and Florida, 9%.
And so now, if you happen to live or have been to any of those places, would you make sure that you throw in a couple extra dollars, because I'm sure you've been able to taste the really good food. So we're going to do the meanwhile here.
Meanwhile, New Mexico is where Latinos are the highest share of a state's population at 49%. It is followed by Texas and California, where 39% of their respective populations are Latino.
Wow, that's fantastic. I know there's some really good food there, and also the beautiful, beautiful culture. So we're looking forward to the next question.
The Hispanic potential buying power as of February 28th, 2019 is A, $1.7 trillion, B, $1.5 trillion, or C, $1.2 trillion.
I see them coming in. You are correct. $1.7 trillion. Great job. All right, the last one is more of a education statement here. Learned a lot about the Hispanic culture, and so I would like to make sure that we look at this and make sure that we also remember this.
The term Hispanic and Latino tend to be used interchangeably in the United States for people in Spanish-speaking or Portuguese-speaking countries like Mexico, Costa Rica, and Brazil. Contrary to many beliefs, Hispanic is not a race, but ethnicity.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for contributing to our Rotary charities. And also thank you to my beautiful Latina wife for being able to help me out here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, both of you, Eric and Esther. It's wonderful to have you join us, Esther, and to contribute for Sergeant at Arms today. Thank you so much. Next up, we've got Sonia Rodriguez-True to introduce our program today.
Thank you, President Jennifer. I am so honored to introduce two women that I have extraordinary respect for. I've known both of them for many years, and I've been able to work with both of them. And I think they just have just a wonderful background. First, Berta Lopez. Berta is responsible for leadership and operations of the Community Health Department, Diabetes Education, Veteran Services, Health Equity, Language Services, Community Benefit, and Community Health Needs Assessment for Virginia Mason Memorial. She has extensive public health and research experience focused on health disparities, community engagement, health promotion, and population health. Bertha received her MBA from the University of Washington Foster School of Business and has received education from the University of Washington School of Public Health. She has been in leadership roles for over 15 years, focused on changing in management, developing strategy, systems change, process improvement, and lean operations. Her passion is addressing health disparities, and she currently serves on the University of Washington Latino Center for Health Research Board and represents Memorial at the Greater Columbia Accountability Communities of Health. And I have had the privilege and opportunity to work with Berta on many things during my tenure on the Memorial Board on those topics. Second, Dr. Paulette Lopez is a Dean of Instruction for Workforce Programs at Highline College, located in Des Moines, Washington. After 18 years at Yakima Valley College as Dean of Workforce Education, she recently left YVC and accepted a new position. Dr. Lopez holds an associate degree in math and science from Sacramento City College, a bachelor's of arts in health promotion, and a master's of science in health kinesiology and leisure studies with an emphasis in health promotion from Purdue University. Dr. Lopez holds a doctorate of Education from the University of Washington, Tacoma with a focus on educational leadership. Dr. Lopez's dissertation, Slow Progress Towards Equity at a Hispanic Serving Institution, focuses on equity and what it means to serve. She states, I am in a position of power and privilege that I never dreamed of, and I realize that educational leaders such as myself who are committed to social justice have a lot more work ahead of us, including framing institutional agendas that contribute to change that impacts all students, faculty, staff, and the communities we serve. Please welcome these two wonderful female powerhouses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sonia, you let me know how we're running this.
They're both on and ready, so
Okay.
I'll turn it over to them.
Paulette, do you want to go first or do you want me to?
Why don't you go ahead, Bertha?
Okay. So thank you for the lovely introduction. Sonia, I share the same sentiment towards you and many other people that are on this call today. And thank you, Nady, for your blessing. I really appreciate that. So like Sonia has already mentioned, my name is Bertha Lopez. I work at Virginia Mason Memorial. I'm the Director of Community Health and Health Equity. I've been with that organization for nearly 14 years. And prior to that, I worked for a bank as a branch manager and many other positions. But I'll share with you my kind of my story around arriving to this country. So I'm an immigrant from Mexico. My family, similar to many families in the Valley, were, traveled here every year to work in the agricultural industry. We decided to settle in the United States when I was 15. So we moved, my family and I moved to the United States when I was 15. And we actually were not in school for an entire year. And in fact, I hadn't finished high school in Mexico. Or preparatory school, how we call it, because we were working. And so I didn't know, one of my sisters and I were still not, we still hadn't finished high school, and we didn't know if we would go back to high school. But we worked for an entire year. My dad and our family were able to save money to give a down payment for a small farm. So we knew farming, and so that's where we went. And we settled in Zilla. So I went to high school in Toppenish. And to be quite frank, I never thought about higher education. And I think it was probably related to the fact that my parents weren't educated. They couldn't dream that for us, and they never talked about that. My dad always talked about, hoping that we would do better than him and that we wouldn't have such a hard job like they did. And so it was thanks to, a fellow Latina, Miss Maldonado from high school, that she was a counselor and she saw my potential. I, had really, really good grades. And even though I was learning English, I, was going to graduate with honors and high honors. And so she pulled me aside and really helped me fill out college applications, understand how to fill out scholarships, and really walk me through the entire process. As a lot of parents know, it's pretty grueling. And she held my hand through that journey. And had it not been for her, I really don't think I would have gone to college. I really don't think I would have seen myself as having that potential, or even dreaming myself into college from a financial perspective, and also from a family perspective of saying, could I, go to a university for higher ed. So after that, I went to YVC and transferred to Central. And as you know, I worked a few years after, and then I graduated from the UW School, Foster School of Business, with a master's in business, so my MBA. Thanks to that, I also attribute her helping me helped my siblings. So I have 2 older sisters and 2 older brothers, and my 2 older sisters also were not going to college at the time. And when I enrolled at YBC, they both enrolled, and I helped them with the process that Miss Maldonado had helped me with. And so we have a ER nurse in the house, and she works at Virginia Mason Memorial, and she's been there for many years. And my older sister has a master's in psychology, and my 2 older brothers are entrepreneurs and do very well. I tell you my story because I think a lot of times I hear this a lot of times that, where are the Hispanic or Latino graduates, and how come we don't have more professional Latinos? And I think part of it is we don't see the barriers that some individuals face. And to be quite frank, against all odds, I feel like I perhaps wasn't meant to have a degree, even though school has always been very, very easy for me. And against all odds, with resilience and, tenacity and grit and intellect, and like me, there are many people that don't have the opportunity, that somebody didn't see that potential, or somebody didn't show up for them, or somebody weren't the voice that I had. And it took a person like that looked like me, to really show me that I can picture myself in that role, because Miss Maldonado looked like me. Her office had, leaders that represented my culture and my community. And she took me under her wing, and she really helped me get where I'm at. And I think thanks to her, she influenced my husband getting a master's degree, and we've influenced younger cousins that have similar agricultural family background to get higher education. So I will pass the baton to Dr. Lopez, but I will leave you with this, to think about those times and those opportunities as you go forward, of showing up for people that have that potential, that have perhaps many, many barriers, that don't have the privileges that we hold and sometimes hold for granted. And how are we showing up for those individuals so that they can achieve their full potential and they can contribute to their fullest to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertha. You inspire me just listening to you. My name is Paula Lopez, and I'm going to share with you my story. Excuse my voice, I have that fire and allergies. I'm a little froggy. So my story is similar, but a little different from Bertha's, because I was born and raised in California. I have generations of family that were born in California. My mother used to say we are original Californians, which means that we were there before the state California became an official state of the United States. And we used to say the saying, some of you may have heard this and some of you may not, but we didn't cross the border, but the border crossed us. So we have many generations of California history, specifically on my mother's side. So my father had a 7th grade education. My mother, she did graduate from high school. She actually had an opportunity to play field hockey back in the day when field hockey was popular. She did get a scholarship, but because of the culture of women stay home, raise a family, she wasn't allowed to go. So she stayed home and raised a family. So she actually, when we were in high school, me and my siblings, I have 4 siblings, she went back to school and got her education, and she became a teacher. So she taught elementary school for many years after that. So my first language is English. Our families come from generational poverty, which was one aspect to inspire me to break the cycle of poverty. My parents were bilingual, but we were from a family that moved from Southern California to Northern California. And at that time, when we've always lived in white neighborhoods. So you can count as many brown people on one hand as how many Latino families that we lived in. So, as kids, you want to be like others. You don't want to be different. So when our parents would speak to us in Spanish, we would say, don't speak to us in Spanish, speak to us in English, because we didn't want to be bullied. We didn't want to be discriminated against. We wanted to be, a normal kids. And usually when you're a kid, you don't know that you're different, excuse me, until somebody tells you you're different. And so, excuse me, my first language is English. And, from then on, I lived in California for many years, and I've had lots of different experiences that I'm not going to share with you today, but the journeys I've had, college was not talked about or to us when we were younger. I think I had one older brother that went to college, and he started at a 2-year community college and went to a 4-year. So I saw that, but it was never inspired as a female in the family to go to school, because women were, our parents still had that concept of the girls should stay close to home. But because I was always the strong one in the family and the loud one in the family and the resistor of the family, if those of you that know me there on this Zoom, you know my personality. I like to voice. I think a good person at heart, but I just have a strong personality that I tell my daughters. Some people may think they try to as women. They may call us something else, but we are strong leaders, and women, we need to, continue to be strong leaders and advocate for one another. And it's even harder for women of color who are in leadership positions, because we have to try harder and prove ourselves twice as much. So, so I did, I realized that the only way to get out of get out of the place I was at, and during that time I went to community college. And that's why I have a passion for community colleges, because it provides access and opportunities for communities. And that's all communities of color, communities of different heritage, communities of different cultures. It provides access and opportunities to our students and those who are transitioning from high school. Those are families who, like my mother, went back to school. So no matter what age, no matter what skill level, community college is there for people. So I've always been, it seems like I've been in community colleges forever. I believe in the community college passion, and I have a passion for that. I am married and I have 3 children and grandchildren. We live in Yakima. I still live in Yakima, although I have a new job at Highline College. And in one way, it's a blessing that COVID is here, because I get to work in Yakima. My husband's here in Yakima. My son and grandkids are here in Yakima. Like many others, maybe some of you in this meeting, some of you may have homes, or some of you may work and transition back and forth. And that's my plan, is to have a home here. I mean, I pay taxes here. I'll vote from Yakima. I'll do all those until we make a final decision in the next few years to potentially to move to the west side. So still here in Yakima. I came to Yakima with my husband, who also is an employee at Yakima Valley College. He loves serving students. At that time, I was Mrs. Lopez. I was finishing my master's degree. From Purdue University, we stayed here. I did a lot of, one of the things I noticed in Yakima, and I really wanted to be a voice for children and be a voice for an advocate for children and families to be able to see people like me and to be able to voice, because I know a person, I wasn't privileged. I wasn't born privileged. I actually earned my privilege through my education and my hard work. So I mean, my positionality is different now than I was maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and definitely over 20 years ago. So I want to use, share my experiences with others, and so then I can advocate for them and be a voice for them, and to let them know that they could do what they want to do. And as long as, you know, what I had were advocates, and I had people in the community. I had people who that would support me, would, you know, just lift me up. Anyway, so I'm here today to share my story, and I know I could talk. So I'm just gonna stop here, and I hope I covered everything, and if not, there's more. So thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you very much for sharing your beautiful stories. It's always wonderful to meet fellow Yakimanians who are powerhouses. I think that's an apt description. And of course, you know, Rotary's always looking to add more powerhouses. So I'm just throwing it out there. No pressure, no pressure. But again, thank you so much for sharing your stories. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Would either of you ladies be open to taking questions?
Absolutely.
We've got some extra time, so if anybody would like to unmute and ask a question, please do.
I have a question. Either of you, what do you think about this celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month? What are your thoughts about that? You know, we received something that it was from 1968 that Congress passed, you know, Hispanic Heritage Month, and that's sort of where the root of this celebration comes from. And we do it once a year in Rotary, and that's sort of a tradition for our club. But what are your thoughts about this day?
That's a very good question. I'll start, and then Bertha, if you want to interject afterwards. So yes, so Hispanic Heritage Month, I even asked Bertha, I mean, I don't celebrate it. Do you celebrate it? We don't celebrate it. Okay, so that might give you a little bit of I don't know what they'll give you, but just to let you know, we don't celebrate it. But yeah, I would say Heritage started, you're right, in the month, but I think it started first with a week. And then we were gracious enough, somebody gave us a month. The president gave us a whole month, just like other months that are dedicated to diversity. But I would say that diversity and inclusiveness should be embraced and celebrated every day, not just during 1 week, 1 month, during certain holidays. I think we have a community here in Yakima that's rich, full of different heritages, different cultures, different traditions. And we need to embrace that. And we have, you know, we're sitting on Yakima lands. The question is, how do we embrace that? How do we embrace our indigenous families and communities? So diversity and inclusiveness and equity should be practiced every day.
And I echo Dr. Lopez's sentiment. I think that for me, I attributed to, you wouldn't celebrate your spouse once a year. You wouldn't celebrate your kids once a year. You won't celebrate your employees or your colleagues once a year. You celebrate their beauty every day. Right? And that should be the same with our cultures that we share, the cultures that we have the privilege of living with. And I think that having a month perhaps allows us the opportunity to reflect on on what it means to me, what it means to you, maybe a person of color or not a person of color. But the reality is that it really needs to be a day-to-day celebration of not just Hispanic or Latino Heritage Month, but every culture that we have. It should be a privilege for us to celebrate each other.
Well, again, thank you so very much, ladies, for joining us today. In honor of you speaking, we're going to be making a donation in your name to our Yakima Rotary Charities. Our Yakima Rotary Charities support our vocational and academic scholarship programs, and also some of the projects that you heard about earlier today in the meeting. So thank you very much. Moving
Jennifer,
on.
could I ask a question?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
We've used, to be politically correct apparently today, but it's been interesting because we've heard the word Hispanic, Latina, and Mexican today. So I would like each one of the 4 Latinas to tell us, what's the appropriate word? Are we talking about Latinx, Latino, Latina, Hispanic, Mexican? What do you think is the preference today, so we'll make sure we're on the right target here with the right name?
Paulette, you probably more prepared to answer that question.
Well, I think and that's a good question, because we get that question all the time. And we ask ourselves, what do we want to call ourselves, right? But I think the important thing is to probably ask that person, how would you like to be identified? Because really the word Hispanic is rooted from, it's basically a government name, you know, it's the government tagged as Hispanic. I personally would say Latino, or Chicano, which wasn't on your list. But I think if you're talking to a person individually, I would ask them how they would identify themselves, because everyone has a different experience, different background, we have different cultures and traditions even within the community of Latinos and Hispanics. So I would just say that I would ask the preference of the person. I know it doesn't answer your question for today, but that's what I would respond to. And Bertha and Sonia, you please interject.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I'm Mexican. When people ask me what's your background, I'm Mexican. I don't find that offensive at all. It's who I am. I know Mexican, historically in the US, the term Mexican has a lot of history and painful history with it. So I think it just depends on the individual. I didn't live through that experience. So for me, somebody saying, oh, she's Mexican, I am Mexican. But I think Hispanic is a word that I think you should thread cautiously with. I think more educated individuals tend to use Latino, Latina. Now the term Latinx is more because it's gender neutral and more commonly used, I think, with individuals. But I agree, ask the individual how they identify. Never make the assumption that because you speak Spanish, you're Mexican, because the reality is we have a lot of countries represented, and a lot of even within the Latino population, there's a lot of individuals that may or may not identify with a specific label.
Yeah, just whenever I'm asked about, what do Latinos think about this, or how do Latinos think about that, or what about this Hispanic Celebration Day, or I always try to make the point that the Latino community, I prefer Latino, Latina, but the Latino community is just as diverse inside of the community as we are diverse as the outside community is diverse. It's so diverse inside the Latino community. And so I do think it's very personal. I personally don't like Hispanic. I think that is a government imposed term. I don't like it. I used to always think about, okay, am I in some kind of a panic, or I just don't like that term. I prefer Latino, but there are Latinos and that they're okay with Hispanic. I think it is very personal. And I always think when you're thinking about our community, this is why I asked a question about the specific day. It's like we are so much more than one day. And I know everybody probably agrees with that, but we are so diverse. And so to represent Hispanic heritage for one day is just very, very challenging because we are so diverse within our community. And I'm hoping it really is something that we embrace more on a common, everyday, weaving into our club level.
Is Esther?
Hi. I was just talking to Eric. I just don't like to be called Mexican because my first reaction is I'm not from Mexico. I wasn't born in Mexico. Neither were my parents, but my great grandparents were, but I mean, I never knew them. So for me, it's either Latina, Hispanic, or my family, there's a lot of Chicanos and Chicanas. So, and I even heard Tejano or Tejana, meaning I'm from Texas. So yeah, it's confusing. So I agree with the ladies is you probably need to ask who you're addressing.
What about when you're talking as a general statement, not necessarily you're talking to a person, but you're describing, let's say we're describing the Yakima Valley. I usually use the term Mexican because most of the people from the valley are Mexican, but a lot of people look at that as a derogatory term.
Mhm.
So would I say Latino, or I'm hearing such a mix of that, and I'm talking about a general statement of, let's say, just talking about our valley.
I don't think you can say a lot of people are the most of the population or just make that assumption. I mean, I think a lot of I think there's Mexican ancestry, but I don't think you can label an entire population based on that. I think there's Central American, South American, there's Texan, a lot of Texan, and I mean, I prefer Latino, but I think it is a individual thing. But when people are speaking around me, whenever they say Hispanic, I'm like, I prefer Latino.
Yeah, I think I would recommend, Rick, that if you're referring to our 50% Latino population, that you use the word Latino. I think you would be including a lot of people that don't have perhaps Mexican heritage or are Mexican. You don't use a label Hispanic, which is not necessarily a term that a lot of Latinos like because it is, census-driven, government appointed. And I think using the term Mexican, like I said, I think it has a lot of history. And I think, sometimes those terms are reserved for populations to use and not necessarily for perhaps people outside of that group to really use as often unless you feel really, really comfortable with the group that you're in. And I think just being cautious about, I would recommend Latino. I think you heard it from all of us. Latino is probably a term that people feel most comfortable with.
My question is, why do we have to use these labels?
Good question. Even race, right? We're all one race. Why do we have all these labels for race?
Yeah, I hate to use labels like that because I don't see how you look that much different from me, and I have some Indian background, which usually is. I don't like using labels.
I have sort of a bizarre situation, actually. I have a nephew who is blonde, blue-eyed, German heritage, immigrant to Mexico a couple generations ago, now lives in the United States as a naturalized US citizen. What should I call him?
I don't know how old your nephew is, but I would ask him.
50.
Yeah, I would ask him. I think people, in my school in Mexico, we had a, blonde woman, a girl from the US, and I don't know what she would identify with.
Would you be offended if I called him a Latino?
I don't think so. I mean, I have friends that, you know, have German descent that are Argentinos, and they believe they identify with Latino. I think that the question is, what do they identify? And that's really the kind of the rule of thumb, I think.
Well, again, I'll wrap up discussion. It's a spirited discussion. I'm so glad to see so many people unmuting and engaging in the conversation. Again, ladies, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We appreciate it greatly. We're going to move on the agenda to our next segment, which is our Rotarians Are Going Places segment with Dottie Hildebrand. Dottie.
All right, yes, Rotarians are going places. I have two different adventures that we're going to share with you today. And the first is Rotarian members Austin Beebe and Brad Hansen and their son, Zach, he's age 11. They took off on July 25th for sunrise in Mount Rainier National Park. Fearless guide Brad miscalculated slightly, and it turned into an 18-mile trek with about 5,400 feet of elevation change. Regardless, mission accomplished. All three had a great adventure and learned a few things along the way. Mosquitoes love Austin, like Zach, and leave Brad alone. Bears are amazing to watch from a distance. Trekking poles are your friend. Freeze-dried camp food can be tasty, to the point an 11-year-old tells his mother it's as good as her cooking when he gets home. And Brad needs to educate his son on what not to tell his mother about backpacking food. Then the second and last adventure I'd like to share with you is baby Oliver 70 was born August 27th. To proud parents, Rotarian Matt 70 and his wife Michelle. He is 2 weeks old today. Congratulations to Matt and Michelle, and welcome Oliver. If any of you have some adventures or something amazing about your summer that you'd like to share it with Carolyn, and you could be part of the next Rotarians Are Going Places. Back to you, President Jennifer.
Thank you, Dottie. What great news to share. We appreciate you taking time to do that. So moving forward, next week's program is going to be Robert Franklin with the history of pre-Manhattan Project town sites. The following week on the 24th, John Ball is going to be sharing the history of the Washington State Fair on what would have traditionally been our fair day. And then on the following week, we're going to have Lowell Kruger, Brian Ketchum, and Melanie Rosen talk about affordable housing in a panel format. So put those on your calendar, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Zoom next week. Thank you all. We are adjourned.